Hi Zebbie, did a nice job with your photos overall. I think that the exposures are generally good and your negatives were pretty good shape throughout. What we see here, nice dark blue on the edges, that's perfect. That shows good exposure overall. And then we see some pretty good detail here, and I'm actually pretty impressed. So we're losing a little bit here, and this is one of those things that you kind of pick up as you learn the technique a little better. You would probably realize that this area needs just a little bit more adjustment on the before you print the negative, but the detail here in the center of the circle, certainly down here on the bottom, is about as nice as you can hope for, especially considering that you basically use office supplies to make your negative. If you enjoy the technique, you could certainly invest in something that would be a little bit more high-end fine art materials, and that would be even better. I'm seeing some specs here. That could be a few things. My guess is the most likely is that you had some dust on your paper. That's a pretty common thing, and one of the things that you might do is kind of flex the paper a little bit, get it with the brush before you put anything on it, and that usually takes care of that kind of thing. What happens is during the process it can have these little dust pieces of paper, and they get kind of pressed in there, and it's not until they get really wet and agitated that like you would have been doing during the washing cycle, that starts to fall off. Not a problem in terms of the assignment goes, but we see a little bit here and there, and that's most likely the reason. Again, beautiful detail here. There are a few little areas in the sky that perhaps could have used more. Really depends on what the sky looked like to begin with. If you had nice big puffy cumulus clouds, for example, that would be the kind of thing that you might expect. But of course, if you had a big blue sky or a pretty uniform overcast sky, this is exactly what we'd expect to see. I think one of the things you might have wanted to have done is really kind of overemphasize this pole, the flake pole in your negative, so basically pure white, just to make sure that it stands out against the sky. But beautiful detail here. We see it in the slats in the wood. We see it in the rocks in the detail, and even the children here in the background. That's really very nice, especially given the nice coarse texture of your paper. This one, again, nice detail here in the middle of the flower. Again, you probably know at this point a little bit more work on the negative. Again, exposure is really very nice. See some really nice detail here in the middle. And I think all of them, this one's probably the least successful. Looks to me like you probably had a couple of things. First of all, maybe the chemistry wasn't quite as even. Maybe it wasn't put on quite as much. I think by and large the biggest thing, however, though, is length of exposure. Assuming that you had good detail in your negative to begin with, we see some detail here in the background. The biggest thing here is just, I think this one could use a little bit more exposure time. There's absolutely some variability as you go, even on a day that seems to be nice and bright. Little clouds can make a difference. Heck, even a big bird flying over can make the difference, depending, if it was kind of hanging out in the same area over the sun, over your print. Overall, for your first time, really very, very nice job. Let me know if you have any questions.